Greetings, Ian from RTO here. Welcome to another album ranking, and it's another request. And today we are going to look at The Verve. Only around for a short time, but they left their mark on the music industry. Now, The Verve were formed in Wigan, which is in the northwest of England, in 1990 by Richard Ashcroft, who was the vocalist, guitarist Nick McCabe, bass player Simon Jones, and drummer Peter Salisbury. And later on, keyboard and guitarist Simon Tong became a member on their reunion only, first reunion only, that is. So, their sound started off as a psychedelic sound on their debut LP, and by the mid-90s the band had released several EPs and four albums. Well, they also endured name and lineup changes, breakups, health problems, drug abuse, and various lawsuits. So they had a torrid time. But they made some really good music. As I said, they've only released 4 albums. They're alright. I don't mind The Verve. I've only got 1 album, but I have listened to them all, so I can make comments. So, coming in at number 4, we have the 4th and final album that was released in 2008, and it's called Fourth. It's their first album of new material since 1997, and the first since 1995 to feature the original lineup without second guitarist Simon Tong. So on this album, it's Richard Ashcroft on vocals, acoustic guitars and keyboards, Nick McCabe lead guitar, keyboards, vibraphone and auto harp, Simon Jones on the bass, Peter Salisbury on the drums, and David Rossi on the string arrangements and violins. So the first track on this album is called Sit and Wonder. Now, when you first listen to this, you go back to when they were at their height, and this is such a mature track. I love the guitar work on here. It's some really nice guitar bits from Nick McCabe, and the acoustic guitar from Richard Ashcroft is quite nice. It's a really solid start. I do like that track. Then we get Love Is Noise. Interesting arrangement. It's okay, not particularly a favourite of mine, I'm afraid. Rather Be. This sounds so much something off Urban Hymn, sorry. It's one of my favourite tracks off this track, Rather Be. I like that track. Judas. It's an alright track. It gets a little bit flat in the middle. It's a bit too long. But yeah, it's listenable. Then we get my favourite track. Now this is longer than Judas, but it's got lots of atmosphere. The bass line from Simon is pretty good. And the guitar solo is quite moody. It's such a really nice moody track. I like that track quite a lot. I See Houses, nothing special. It's a little bit flat, to be quite honest. And then we get Noise Epic, which is the longest track. It's a nice track. It's got lots of atmosphere, different moves and textures, some great guitar riffs, and a great vocal from Richard, and one of the best songs on the album. Valium Skies, one of these songs that starts off very genteel with some delicate touches, and then it just builds up into a pretty solid track. Colombo, not keen on this one. The drums are about 200 miles in front of each other. Of everything else, it doesn't really fit. Then we got Appalachian Springs. It's a bit long. It's 7 minutes long. It didn't need to be 7 minutes. It just, after about 4 minutes, you sort of lose interest on that one. Okay, that was the last track. It's not a bad album. They tried to capture the glory days. They did it on some of the tracks, and some of the tracks it didn't quite work, and they were quite unmemorable. But for the tracks that really worked, I should give this an RTO ranking of 6.5. Okay, then coming in at number 3, we have the second album released in 1995, A Southern Soul. And the title is reference to the Northern Soul, a popular soul movement in Britain in the 1970s. So we've got Richard Ashcroft on vocals and acoustic guitars, Nick McCabe on electric guitars, Simon Jones on percussion, and Pete Salisbury on drums. And there's some additional people on here. Liam Gallagher is on hand claps, Will Malone the strings, and Gavin and the London Session Orchestra has all the strings on a track called History. So the first track is called A New Decade. A pretty solid track. Some great riffs again here from Nick. The drumming is pretty good as well from Pete. It's got an interesting beat. It's not a bad track. This is music. The track is dominated by this very strong bass line from Simon. Everyone else comes in. And they just layer around this wonderful bass line, and it's one of my favourite tracks on the album. You'll on your own, never. It's not a great track. Bit boring, lacks some depth. So it goes, a very melodic song. Unlike the previous song, this has got more depth to it. It's got a bit more body. It's a really good song. It's a long song, but it doesn't. It's 6 minutes long, but it's a very enjoyable song. Well crafted song. A Northern Soul. Love the guitar work on this. The acoustic sounds good. It's not a bad track at all. Brainstorm interlude. I don't like this. As this is a brainstorm interlude, seems a lot of noises, very busy. Nothing coherent there for me. Then Drive You Home. This is a really nice atmospheric ambient. The guitar is really nice. It's a great vocal from Richard Ashcroft. You got some great drumming from Pete. It's smooth, it's gentle, it's quite mellow. Then my favourite track on the album is History. This reminds me of another track that they went on to do. It's got strings. Can you hear the can clapping of Liam Gallagher? No, but it's a terrific track. It's got lots of depth. They went on to develop this song and make it in, and took elements of this, and they had the next time they come out like this, had their biggest hit, of course. You'll find out in a moment. Then we get Knock on My Door. Very good Brit pop. Some nice guitar work on that. I do like that. That is pretty cool. Life's an Ocean. Simon's bass line is really good. It's an ambient bass line. It's and the drumming's quite eerie in this. It's very good. Stormy Clouds is next. It's not too bad. And then this thing called Reprise. It's just a bit of an instrumental thing at the end. It's a good album, but I don't think it had the same punch as their debut. But it's sometimes when you have a great first album, the second album's either going to be good or a little bit different. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. I think they did experiment too much on this. And if you get what I mean, it's just too much experimental. But they got it right on the next album. So I should give this an RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. Okay, so coming in at number 2 is the debut album, released in June of 1993, A Storm in Heaven. Richard Ashcroft, Nick McCabe, Pete Salisbury, Simon Jones, Simon Clark on the flute. The kick horns are on here. Bet Lacey does the chorus flute on Virtual World, and Roddy Lamoire does the horn arrangements. First song is called Star Sail. I love the guitar in this. The drum sounds good. It's got this real psychedelic feel to it. Really good track. Slide Away, atmospheric. The bass line from Simon is great, and Richard Ashcroft's vocal is fantastic on that one. Already There, got again, it's very psychedelic. The ambience with the guitars, the textures. Solid track. Beautiful Mind. I love the bass on this. It's ambient again, some lovely textures, some really intricate drumming. It's gentle and it's so smooth. Fantastic track. The Sun, the Sea, a little rock track, you know, with all this ambience. You get some great riffing on here. It's one of my favourite tracks on here. Then we get Virtual World. This is fantastic. It's almost a progressive rock track. I love the flute. This is a sort of a cross between Van der Graaf Generator meets Focus meets Jethro Tull. It's a great track and it is my favourite on the album. Make It Till Monday, very psychedelic. Great track, very early Pink Floyd influenced sound here. Very, very good track. Blue, some great riffs on here. Certainly got a bit of a rock psychedelia to it. Another really good track. Butterfly. It's got a bluesy feel to this. It's really, really good. And then we got See You Next Time. See you in the next one. Have a good time. I love this track. The piano here is wonderful. Now I think it's played by Nick. Yes. Nick McCabe plays the piano on this, and he's a pretty good pianist as well as a good guitarist. It's so ambient, that piano, and a great vocal from Richard. A very good debut album from The Verve. Not a bad track on this one. Atmospheric, psychedelic, prog, very underrated album, I think, and doesn't get the praise it actually deserves. Probably one of the best albums of 1993. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 7.5. I'm really considering getting this one because I think it is absolutely brilliant. So my number one album, well, it's only an obvious choice. It's the third album released in 1997 and it is Urban Hymns. On here we've got Richard Ashcroft, Nick McCabe, Simon Tong on the second lead guitar and keyboard, Simon Jones on the bass, Peter Salisbury on the drums. Liam Gallagher's back to do some hand claps. Wouldn't be the same without Liam Gallagher giving it the hand claps. So the first track on here is the brilliant Bittersweet Symphony, probably one of my favourite songs of the 1990s. Okay, they say it's taking bits, plagiarism from Rolling Stones, but hey, he took that riff and it's brilliant. The drums are great. I love the video to this. It's absolutely brilliant song. Sonnet. This is very gentle. It's a great vocal from Richard. Some fine performance on the vocals from Richard on this album. Really smooth. Fantastic. The Rolling People. I love the ambience on this. Delicate work from Nick. And the guitars, a great drum beat. Now these first three songs, most of the songs on here, the producer Youth is involved, and you can tell he's a very good producer. So lovely sound on that. Then we get another quality song from this album, The Drugs Don't Work. People think this is one of the best songs, and it's good, but it's not brilliant. It's still a pretty classic track though. Catching the Butterfly. I love the bass. line on this from Simon. Simon, the bass player, Simon Jones, really strong. Space and Time, the great guitar. This great guitar work from on there. There's it's a little. This is produced by Chris Potter, which is a little bit different from Youth. This is more rocky. It's got a bit of edge to it. It's really good. The viola sounds good on this. Weeping Willow, a very well crafted song, almost Britpop with a little bit more. I'd say this is upper class Britpop. I like this. Then we get Lucky Man, which is my second favourite track on the album, and one of my favourite tracks by The Verve. I love the overtones of the acoustic guitar and the electric guitar that really mix well. It's a wonderful vocal from Richard, probably one of his finest on this album. Then we get One Day, another track I really enjoy, beautifully put together. Youth has produced this one, and it's really good, solid track. This Time, this is an interesting track. It's got lots of rock on it, sounding. It's a bit. It starts to go a little bit techno in places. Not full on, but changing the thing, and it just didn't work for me. Velvet Morning. This reminds me of early Muse. You know, from the Showbiz era. It's really good. Then we get Come On, absolutely brilliant. You have to crank this one up. It's a good rocker. Okay, it's got a bit of bad language on it, but it's very U2 in places as well, early U2, so that's pretty good. Then you get That Silence, and then you get this little hidden track called Deep Freeze. Nice guitar, very ambient, and a few keyboards on it. It's very nice. I think this is a fantastic album. After their second album, they sort of experimented. They sort of went back to what they did on that debut album, and they brought in Youth and Chris Potter. Between them, they put this wonderful album together. It's one album that I've got, and I really enjoy this one. There's a couple on here that are a little bit suspect, but on the whole album is very well produced. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. So there we go. There's a bit of Verve for you. A really good band. So that's that. So I'll be back later for retro ranking, and today we're going to do one of those, not praise their people's songs, but have a look at some of their rather suspect songs. And today it's my beloved Status Quo in the spotlight. 20 songs that I'm not very keen on by Status Quo. I might upset people, but we all can't like the same thing, can we? So come and join me for that later. So bye for now.